at Google and friends, they are keeping all the best pieces to themselves while they make huge profits of their data, while in our case, or in general in DeepIn, right, we want to decentralize it, share the incentives. And also our data is often more correct. So we worked on a proof of concept with a big geolocation company, and their data sets had, in 60% of the cases, there was some little flaw in the data set. In our data set was in more than 59% of the cases it was correct.
Welcome to this particular episode of Building Useful Shit, where we talk about everything HumanAIx. Now, if you guys aren't too familiar with this particular project or program, it was essentially revealed or unveiled to us recently in Hong Kong by the OddTech team, where we have a number of different founding partners, and that's the whole purpose of this particular series. In today's episode, we have with us Markus Levin, the co-founder of XYO. Thank you so much for joining us today, Markus. How are things going with you?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's a really cool podcast. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Look, I recently, very recently, probably 2 days ago, saw this post on X by the OddTech team, and they sort of introduced you guys, and they used a couple of buzzwords in there that we wanted to sort of understand slightly better, to understand y'all's contribution and sort of insights into what you guys are doing in tandem with HumanAIx. And it actually described you guys as providing geospatial data for AI training and validation. Tell us a little bit more, what's that all about?
Yeah. AI needs data which has a high degree of certainty that it's doing correct, right, for its training. If it doesn't, then the data can be, that the AI's answers can be hallucinating and so on. And so our technology provides a higher degree of certainty that the location data, for example, is true and correct, or that a data point was collected at the location where it was supposed to be collected, like let's say temperature sensor or something like that, and then we validate and verify it, right, and can connect it with AI training. But we are not only doing that for geolocation data, we also, that's how we started out, but today we validate and verify really any data. It can be, like mobile or internet data, but also offline data, let's say like your bakery's opening hours, or it can be cloud data, weather data, and you name it. And so we validate and verify to the XYO network, and then we can store it somewhere for an AI to use, so we can connect it to a smart contract,
That's very cool. In fact, my follow-up was going to be, is that somewhere on the lines of how proof of location works? Because that's actually the first time I've heard of a consensus mechanism such as that. So want to quickly understand, how does that sort of help in building a reliable, decentralized ecosystem with the whole proof of location side of things built in?
Location has more and more value attached to it. Right? If you think about automated supply chains or self-driving cars, or you think about smart cities, but also the apps on your phone, like a lot of that is location reliant. And if you are able to spoof or lie about location, then suddenly your e-commerce package might be somewhere else, right? Or you might be just a nefarious actor, basically. And so it's important that we are able to make location almost unspoofable and unhackable. And we do that through our network of devices, where you have several devices talking with each other, or something that do like a cryptographic handshake, called a bot witness. And as you have more and more interactions of devices, like mobile phones and IoT devices, then you get more and more certainty that about those devices, and they build reputation and so on. And then over time, you can get a relational map and so on of where things move around. And then you can layer data on top of that. Let's say the temperature sensor I mentioned before, or the bakery's opening hours, like where's that bakery? We have another piece of technology called proof of origin, where we basically can say where a data point was created, let's say on a sensor, right? And then it was stored in a IPFS database, and then put it into a smart contract, and we entangle it along the way. And record the handoff, and so that way we can say, originated and where it ended up. And you asked about decentralization. So we have a huge network of devices and users who contribute. Like we have more than 8 million nodes in our network.
Wow.
Which makes us one of the largest DPINs and a lot of data for AI training. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's actually very, very insightful. I was quite in the dark about a lot of those things there. We see, big players like Google Maps, or a few other centralized providers that are currently already providing a lot of that, collecting a lot of that location data and whatnot. How would it really matter to decentralize all of that? That's the first question. And at some point of time, what advantage does XYO's approach over traditional location services provide us?
Yeah. The first one is like, of course, it's like at Google and friends, they are keeping all the best pieces to themselves while they make huge profits of their data, while in our case, or in general in DeepIn, right, we want to decentralize it and share the incentives. And also, our data is often more correct. So we worked on a proof of concept with a big geolocation company, and their data sets had, in 60% of the cases, there was some little flaw in the data set. In our data set, was in more than 59% of the cases, it was correct. And so our data can be much better, much more correct, and then that is makes more reliable for high value things. Let's you're in the healthcare sector, for example, or some other things, right? You want to make sure that your data is true and correct, and if you train AI on high value data, yeah.
That's amazing. In fact, I want to quickly reel this back to HumanAIx. We are seeing this massive alliance of, so many different partners in this particular alliance, some from AI, blockchain, decentralized, storage, infrastructure, all of that good stuff. From your perspective, what are some of the exciting synergies that y'all are currently seeing happening within this particular alliance?
Yeah, this is such a good alliance, HumanAIx, because it wants to put all the things AI needs into one space, like compute, storage, data, and then put a human spin on it. And DeepIn does that, obviously, right? It's a human powered system versus a corporate control system, and then put certain rules on it that it's human driven, let's say. And so I love how this comes all together, and all the pieces are put together, and the alliance is an open alliance or a closed alliance. So others can join it. You can apply to join the alliance if you have a project which runs in those categories, right? There are others which have AI probably, then you can join the alliance and then be a part of it.
No, that's really cool. In fact, this is probably the first of its kind in the space, and really exciting to see how many more sort of partake and eventually grow this out to be more than just one particular project handling this entire, building out this entire space. So very exciting stuff over there. I wanted to quickly come back to the whole security side of, decentralized AI and, so many different other aspects to security, more in line with what XYO is doing. I wanted to sort of understand, how do you guys sort of secure geospatial data in a trustless environment? How does that work? What are some of the implications if things go wrong? Stuff like that, really.
Yeah. For us, we secure it with a tech we wrote about before, but also, we blockchain helps us. We make data immutable, and we use zero knowledge proofs to make it very privacy centric, and so others outside of the blockchain space, I think will have difficulty to do that in the same manner we do. And I think that helps AI in the end, because it makes the data so much better, for AI training.
I want to know from you, Markus, how do you see XYO's technology sort of play a role in various different other industries, like smart cities, for example, autonomous vehicles, or even supply chain for that matter? Would that be like a possibility at some point in time?
Yeah. Like part of us is, so we do the data validation and verification, but also we do the tracking of assets in a way, right? And so in a smart city, everything comes together where you generate a ton of data from sensors around the city, like the traffic lights and the cars and the everything, right? And that data comes together, and then we validate that it really came from where it is, and we manage that whole data piece, right? And we just launched a new layer 1, XYO layer 1. It allows you to store all that data in a very efficient manner and to analyze it, and then you can run the city basically, and then train AI and run the with AI and the data, and we are able to track the assets also in that city. Let's say the cars, and are able to say where they are at a given point. Then when we do a smart city application, and then you have a lot of sensors there. So the more sensors you have, the more certainty you have in our network. Right. So smart cities should go really, really well for the experiment.
When you know what, we've seen so many different dystopian stories and movies out there that talk about a potential future where we see flying cars and smart cities and all that. Really looking forward to seeing decentralized AI play that pivotal role in sort of being the foundational for years to come, in line with those dystopian movies. Exciting stuff ahead of us. Definitely looking forward to it. Talking about AI generated material that we see on a daily basis, with concerns over AI generated misinformation, we've seen so many different platforms like IG, for example. Every time you put out something that's AI generated, they'll add a little tag beside your content. I guess my question over here is, how can HumanAIx sort of leverage XYO's data verification? I know you guys have a well built out data verification system. How do you see that improve the integrity of AI models, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think often you don't know, like there's several truths. If you look at politics, right, there's the truth of the left and the truth of the right, right? And people believe different things, and depending on which side they follow. And I think and it's the same, I think, for AI. If AI is trained on one truth or the other truth, then it might be biased in one way or the other. And I think if with our data, basically, you can say how that AI was trained and can follow that data and know that the data is not fake news, for example, but it's real news, and that's important. In news, it's one thing, but if you think of really high value sectors, then it's absolutely critical that you're able to discern that the data is true and correct. There's these AIs now, right, which run, for example, they're trained on medical studies, and there's what happens so many medical studies, right? And to see if there's other things they can figure out, other therapies and drugs and so on, imagine, some of those medical studies would be wrong, that would be very impactful, very expensive, and probably very dangerous. And so with technologies like ours, you can make sure that the data which comes into an AI is true and correct, and so the output is more reliable.
Okay. Markus, when it comes to decentralizing anything today, it's quite a task as it is. And you guys are decentralizing, location data. What are some of the challenges that you guys have had to overcome in order to get to where you guys are currently, and obviously in turn help HumanAIx and all of that. But, what are some of those main challenges that, y'all had to overcome, or you'll still potentially see as a challenge?
Yeah, we launched in 2018 with the original DeepIn, and it's the very first. And there were so many challenges, and regulatory, the markets go up and down, and we changed our business model here and there to be able to build a reliable business model. The beauty in DeepIn, like the sector we're in, is that you have real business models, different than other crypto projects, we don't just live off our token reserve and then shut down the project kind of situation after a few years, but we are around for 7 years. And that is possible, because we have these real business models and it generates money and so on. And so I think we went through these market crazinesses over the last few years, but we were able to persist through it because we built something real. And so my advice to other projects is also, don't just think about the value of your token. That might be important to your community and people and yourself maybe, but
that's true.
Extremely important that you build something which is meaningful and useful to others.
No, that's amazing that you say that, because thinking back to 2018 when I first got into the market, back then I don't even think Deepin was an acronym back then, so it's amazing to see how you guys have come all this way, and I guess what my question is here is, what have you seen over these last 7 years that has been critical or pivotal in developing or taking the direction that you guys have taken with regard to XYO? Has there been some sort of technology that has made it possible to get to here today that you'll probably faced as maybe a difficulty back then? What's that experience been like?
Yeah, more important than the technology, I think, was the way we were able to shift. So in the beginning, we were building a project for crypto enthusiasts, and where crypto enthusiasts came into the project, they bought IoT devices and so on, and then we sold our services in XYO, and so it was just very difficult for anyone outside of crypto to understand. And then the environment was very hostile to crypto, and so we understood that if we want to succeed, we need to have a much larger addressable market, right? We need to be able that your grandma can join our ecosystem as well. And so we launched a mobile app called Coin. The Coin app, you can just download it, and you don't need to understand anything about crypto, and you can just participate. And then you can still withdraw your XYO tokens to a wallet, but you can also just withdraw it to like a Coinbase email address, for example. So you don't even need to deal with wallets and custody and these kinds of things. And so today, maybe 80% of the people who come into our ecosystem are non-crypto users, but we turn them into crypto users. And that's, I think, absolutely critical for the success, is that you are able to attract someone outside of your immediate niche, and really a very large group. And now on the demand side, obviously we accept US dollars and other currencies today, in addition to crypto, and working with a lot of Web2 companies as well.
Look, you earlier mentioned, in line with regulation back in 2018, when you guys were starting up and stuff like that. Is that like a topic of concern when it comes to different technologies that cannot be controlled per se? I mean, is that even a discussion that is being had for decentralized AI today, or even with regard to HumanAIx and the kind of stuff that you guys are building out today with regard to this alliance? Is regulation something that is going to be a hot topic maybe a couple of years from now?
Yeah, it's a hot topic today. I think in different places you have different regulation. I think in the US now, with the new administration, they try to figure out the regulation, cancel some AI regulation to allow for they say to enable innovation more, and then which is relevant for HumanAIx, and then I think some reasonable crypto regulation will come in the next year or two. And the US is kind of a cheerleader often. If the US puts out regulation, then others follow, and it also has an impact on the big institution like the IMF and the World Bank and the UN and so on. And I think in Europe you have a MiCA and the AI Act, which is maybe more restrictive than what's going to come in the US, and I think it might hinder regulation, might hinder innovation and the growth of AI and crypto. And where you are in Dubai, there is they're quite innovative, right, and tech forward in the regulation, and so it's I think different places will then eventually will need to compete. You know, if the Gulf countries, for example, and the US has very forward regulation, and the EU doesn't, or China doesn't, then they won't be able to compete for companies and talent. And so they will need to change the regulation, I think. And so I think it's a super hot topic, and I think it's relevant for where projects show up and the teams.
We clearly know that AI has taken off over the last 3 years. And at some point in time, we're already seeing at this point of time, decentralized AI also gaining momentum. My last question to you is, how do you sort of envision XYO evolving over these next few years?
Yeah, AI will become a much bigger part of what we do. You know, today it's just a few clients in AI who use our data for AI, but in the future, I think it will just be living and breathing. I think everything we touch will be AI enabled somehow. You know, like devices and real world assets and data and everything. You know, and so we love to be part of this alliance, right, which brings this world forward.
Wonderful. Look, thank you so much, Markus. I really appreciate having you on today and just sharing your knowledge and insights into how, we are sort of growing out this particular alliance towards a much bigger and greater decentralized AI space altogether. Guys, if you all enjoyed this video as well, do make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Do make sure to follow along with this entire series and just the number of different founders coming on and sharing their insights overall on how we are sort of building out HumanAIx and the decentralized AI space. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in our next episode.